So we are talking to Laura Krantz. We actually spoke to Laura.
Yeah.
It was 2021, late January, the very first episode of season 5. And we're huge fans because Laura hosts the Wild Thing podcast. And season 1 was about Bigfoot. Season 2 was about UFOs. And today is her launch day.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is.
Season 3. I can't tell you how grateful we are that you took the time because I know you've got to be swamped today.
Yeah.
And I've already been listening to it. Wild Thing going nuclear. Thank you so much for joining the podcast.
And I'm very excited to be here. I love talking to you guys. You have a fun show and a good rapport.
Well, it's just so exciting when you listen to a show and you love it. And literally, yours is like one of the few podcasts that I listened to one episode and then I gobbled up all of it. I just listened to every single episode. And then to reach out and to have you respond and be like, yeah, hey, let's talk. That always just makes me so happy. And especially to support another female podcaster and someone who's making excellent content.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about this.
So this season it's a little bit of a switch. It's about nuclear energy, but it comes from the same place that season 1 did, where I have this sort of personal connection. I grew up in a town called Idaho Falls, which is in southeastern Idaho, and it is about 45 minutes away from what is now called the Idaho National Laboratory, but 60 years ago was called the National Reactor Testing Station. And this is where the government was testing all kinds of different nuclear reactors because we were trying to figure this science out. Like our real first experiences with nuclear came with the bomb. And we didn't, we wanted to figure out what materials worked, what fuels you could use in a reactor. Can we use a reactor to get the kind of power that we wanted? So they were doing all these experiments out there. And in 1961, one of these experimental reactors blew up and it killed 3 men. And it is still the deadliest nuclear reactor accident in American history, but nobody knows about it. Almost no one talks about it. If you ask someone, what's the worst nuclear reactor accident? Everyone's like 3 Mile Island. Nobody died in 3 Mile Island. It was still problematic, but this is far and away worse. And what's interesting is I didn't even hear about it until I was an adult. And I grew up in this town, and people I know work out at the lab, and my dad was a sophomore in high school when this happened, and it's one of those things that I just didn't hear about, and when I did, I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy.
So I'm curious, is this one of those things where they didn't talk about it on the news?
It was all over the news. The day after this accident happened, there were headlines in all the newspapers, like everyone was covering it. But I think it had to do with the time period of when it happened. This was the early 1960s. This is really pre-Vietnam. This is really pre-Watergate. We're not that far away from World War II. People kind of trust the government. And there's a level of transparency and trust that's going on that I think if this had happened 20 years later would have been a completely different story.
Yeah, that's back when the nothing to see here, folks, move on still worked.
And then we also now have an element of social media to things, which probably makes it worse.
Right. I would say because, the story can get twisted
Skewed.
in a lot of, that's not to say there weren't rumors. The government did everything it could to set the record straight. It was like telling people the blow-by-blow account of what had happened. They were pretty open about it. But there were still these rumors that cropped up that there had been a love triangle and that one of the men had been sleeping with another man's wife, and the guy had, in a fit of fury and sadness, had like destroyed the reactor, killing himself and everyone else in it.
Oh, wow. On purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scary.
There is absolutely nothing to back this up, but this rumor has held on for forever. The New York Post last October ran an article with the headline, "Was this nuclear reactor destroyed because of a love triangle?" Yeah, like people love this rumor, and that the story is like inextricably intertwined with the story of the explosion. The other part of the reason I wanted to tell this story is because now, 60 years later, there's all these new styles of reactors that are being created as we're trying to figure out how to have enough energy to power the modern world, how we do it cleanly, how we deal with climate change and try and get off of oil and gas and things like that. And so new nuclear reactors are being built out at this Idaho National Laboratory. And for the first time in 60 years or over 60 years, my town, Idaho Falls, will be on the receiving end of one of these newer nuclear reactors. And so I'm kind of like, all right, it's been 60 years. I am sure the technology is way better than it was. We've come a long way.
It's gotta be, right?
Fingers crossed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're still human. We are the unstable element in this whole thing.
Oh, that's a terrifying thought.
Yeah. How much do we really, I know nothing about.
How much do we want to know, honestly?
Well, we probably
You're going to learn so much.
I totally believe you, but there is a little part of me that's kind of scared.
Well, and I think that is totally normal. I think a lot of people feel that way because when we do hear about reactor accidents or these kinds of things, they really stand out. But part of the reason they stand out is they happen so infrequently. Like we hear about airplane crashes all the time and it's sad and we're like, oh, that's a bummer. And like, do I want to fly? But then you get back on the airplane and you go to the Bahamas and you have a great time and you don't think twice about it. Nuclear reactors, the accidents there happen so infrequently. And actually the accident that happened at this reactor back in 1961 it opened a lot of eyes and they realized that there was a fundamental flaw that they then needed to make sure that none of the other reactors out there had this problem. So it did actually add some level of safety going forward.
Everything that I think of about nuclear energy, it's black and white.
Yep.
It's like, oh, that sounds like a really great thing that we'll never be able to harness and we're just going to kill each other with. Like, and there's no in between. It's because I have a 100% limited knowledge. I learned more just in the last 20 minutes listening to your episode 1. Seriously, but also the realization that if we are going to get to clean energy, we got to think about this stuff. We have to we have to know what we're getting into because it is happening.
Do you still live there?
I don't. My parents do though, so I go home pretty often.
Okay, I was just wondering if it kind of freaks you out a little bit to know that that's so close by.
Not really.
Okay.
And it's funny because growing up there, like we knew they were doing nuclear stuff in that area. And I just never really thought twice about it.
Yeah, that's
which
crazy.
Is kind of, I grew up next to that. I went to college in Washington State, which is right near the Hanford nuclear site where they were building plutonium bomb parts during World War II and during the Cold War. So there's all kinds of like waste left over from that. And then now I'm just down the road from Rocky Flats, which is another one. I've been surrounded by this stuff my whole life, and I haven't really thought about it all that much.
Since your first 2 seasons were about Bigfoot and UFOs, have you gotten any pushback from original fans for not doing something spooky
that's a good question.
this season?
Yeah, I've gotten a little bit, people being like, oh, I'm not all that interested in an industrial accident, or I hope you're going to go back and, do ghosts or the Loch Ness Monster. There's part of me, I understand where they're coming from, but if you listened to both seasons all the way through, you see that it's really about this intersection between science and society and like these ideas we hold on to and these myths that we have and how those actually bump up against the science and the facts and the information that's out there. And it was a story that I really ended up being fascinated by. And I wasn't initially sure that I was going to do this as a podcast. And then I was like, there's just so much information here. It's just rich. And so I wanted to pursue it. But, for those of you who are not fans of this season, I will probably be headed back in the other direction again for season 4.
I'm really glad that you did this. And also, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to, like paranormal, true crime, all kinds of
all of them,
all the wild history stuff. And if you listen to enough podcasts, you start hearing the same stories over and over again.
Right.
I've never heard this story.
Either.
I've never heard anything about it. And it is fascinating. And you're so good. You're such an excellent storyteller. Like, yeah, I'd listen to you read recipes, honestly.
Which recipe would you like? I have a really good chocolate chip cookie one.
So since your first seasons were about Bigfoot, UFO, have you found any other evidence or heard of any other stories since that really got your attention?
Oh, yeah. I've been wanting to ask you that for a while.
Like basically an update on what you found out.
Yeah. Like, has anybody reached out to you with, oh, I got this Bigfoot call, or, oh, I got this video of a UFO. Have you gotten anything that really stands out to you?
I have gotten some things, but they don't really stack up. But I know. And I love it that people reach out to me and are like, I saw Bigfoot, and then they'll send me a photo and I'm like, that looks like every other Bigfoot photo I've ever seen, which isn't to say that Bigfoot is not out there, but we still need that evidence and proof. It's interesting you mentioned the UFO stuff because they actually had a hearing this morning in the House of Representatives about
I saw
UAPs.
Yes.
I
like 20 something years that they're finally discussing UFOs again.
Yeah, they are. Nothing came out of it. Like
Oh,
there was,
I
know. It was all this
look
hype.
into it yet.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if you saw, the Mars rover found photos on Mars, and there's like what looks like a doorway.
Door. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that or not.
Maybe it's a door. We'll see. I do have some other exciting news, which is that the podcast has been turned into a series of middle grade nonfiction books. And the one about Bigfoot will be out in October. It's called The Search for Sasquatch.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So excited for you.
And it's so beautifully illustrated by this guy, Rafael Nobre. He's out of Brazil. It's really cool. And I'm excited for you guys to see it. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think you should be doing TV with all of your stuff too, because you're just great. We're clearly big fans, but yeah.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yeah. You need a little Netflix docuseries. That's
right.
Laura Krantz, thank you so much for taking the time today. And
Always.
especially here on your big launch day. So where can everybody find all your episodes and all of your everything?
So the podcast will be available on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, the usual suspects.
Mhm.
If you become a premium subscriber, you can go to wildthingpodcast.com and click the link to become a premium subscriber. You will get the new episodes early. You will get access to all the bonus episodes exclusively from all 3 seasons. And then you get that warm, fuzzy feeling from supporting something you love.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So definitely become a premium subscriber and keep in touch. Let us know how things are going. And when you finally get, a solid story about the little green men, we want to hear all about it.
Of course, you'll be my first call.